All right, well, let's get into it. Hey guys, how you doing?
Sam, great to meet you.
Great to meet you, Sam.
All right, well, I gotta do this, man. I don't know if she warned you or what have you, but before we start any interview, I am so thankful and happy to have you here. We do something called the over the top intro, and I gotta butter your bread a little bit. I gotta talk about y'all pretty good. Is that okay?
Yeah,
That's okay.
go for it.
All right. My next guest is an award-winning actor, writer, producer, known for his work on Green Rush, The Last Seven, Never Have I Ever, Return from the Hiding Place, and right next to him on this Zoom screen is another award-winning actor, director, producer. He is the co-founder and the CEO of Ventura Studios, the co-founder of Skinny Weed, which is just plain awesome. I'm just gonna break this for a second just to say that. And they are both here to talk about their latest project, Unsinkable, an immersive new 11-part audio movie series launching on Wondery, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and everything else July 10th, 2024. John Mawson Misha Crosby, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you, Sam.
Wow.
There's the
Fulfilled my
energy.
dream of entering a wrestling ring right there, dude. Thank you for that intro. Look at that.
Oh, man. I want that feeling, man, because when you talk about and what we're here to talk about today, I always start with those entrants because, yeah, I want that big fight feel. I want people who's listening to me on our audio version of the podcast or who hearing it, I want them to understand that who I'm walking or having this conversation with is I'm essentially walking them down to the ring. It's a big fight feel. These guys are a big deal. John and Misha is worth a damn. So this is why you need to listen.
Thank you.
Well, we appreciate it.
We appreciate that.
But speaking of theater of the mind, let's talk about it. Let's get into it.
All right.
I got a chance to listen to the first 5 of this project, and it's beautiful. I love it. How did this idea come about?
It came about, Sam, because my first job straight out of school was in the Merchant Navy, Merchant Marine, you'd say here. I was at sea for 13 years. I qualified as a ship's captain. So I know ships and I know cargo ships. And it's part of my heritage to know about this story as an extraordinary thing that happened in 1940. It was well known at the time in the UK and England. It was actually filmed. There was a movie version made in 1943. So I knew this story, and I know the world of this story. And I wrote a movie version in 2011. I wrote a full-length screenplay of it because I felt we were getting to a stage where we could do the story proud, we could do the special effects that it deserved, we could create the whole world. And so I wrote that. I wrote an expanded version, but bringing in the court case that you're starting to hear in the episodes you've heard, which is an extraordinary court case that happened a couple of months later because of what happened on that ship. And so I wrote a TV series version. And then it went on to a whole different ball game. It changed completely. And Misha, why don't you take it on?
So I originally had read John's feature film screenplay, The Sandometria, and it's really a fantastic script. It was something that intrigued me to then take on as a film with this Datura to develop and move those pieces along. And then a little thing called COVID-19 came along.
Yep.
And we were like, well, we might have to put the brakes on that idea. But at the same time, a certain Jack Bowman, who was friends with John, had come over from the UK, had done a lot of radio production with the BBC, and had said to us, hey, have you guys ever thought about doing this as an audio movie? And we both looked at each other and said, what the hell's an audio movie? And he said, well, imagine a high-end feature film, full blockbuster sound design, orchestral score, possibly bringing it out in Dolby Atmos, but just without the pictures. Like, that's interesting. And so we proceeded to try and put the pieces together. We did a little test, just something very cheap and cheerful. We got some actors in LA that we knew to record some of them under covers of this at that time. To send us back this sort of 6-minute segment that we'd sort of done is really just a proof of concept for ourselves as much as anything else, to see if something like this was achievable. Because as you've probably heard, there are some big action sequences in this. And we're like,
Oh yeah.
is this going to translate to the ear? And so we tried it out in this little 6-minute segment, and we were like, okay, no, there's something that can work here. And then we worked. John went away and took that feature film, and we broke it into 11 individual episodes, each with their own self-sustaining arcs, and rewrote it for audio. John did a lot of wonderful work on that, which we then gave notes on and developed, so on and so forth. And then started thinking about who we could put together for our cast. And it was as simple as John and I going in and making lists who would be right for each character, and then preparing ourselves for some pain and suffering as we went out to the town and tried to get who we wanted. And it certainly, I'm not going to pretend it was easy, but the right attachments came. Brian was the first big one. And I remember calling John when he confirmed, and hearing a grown man's voice go up 4 octaves and him leap up to a table to celebrate was a moment I'll never forget. And from there, yeah, Hollywood is a wonderful thing of, everyone loves being first to be second. Once Brian Cox was on board, Malkovich comes on board. We got Thomas, we got Natalie, who I actually knew from a TV show back in the UK. We did a show called Hollyoaks together back, 2009. But, even outside of those 4, we really wanted to just go for people we thought were just the best people possible for those roles. And there's a great depth to this cast that we're really excited about. Harry Hamlin's in there as well. We've got Rupert Vansittart from Braveheart, 4 Winners and a Funeral. He's also in Game of Thrones with Natalie. Juliet Aubrey, who's a BAFTA winner. We've got Blair Redford, who I worked with once upon a time on The Lion Game. Paul Telfer, who is a Daytime Emmy nominee. He does a lot of work on Days of Their Lives. He was also fantastic in Lionsgate's Green Rush, produced by Tatura Studios. Thank you very much. And so, yeah, we were very, 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 very excited to put that together. And then from there, actually try and turn that into something that you hear today.
Now, why was it so important to make this an audio movie versus like a podcast or traditional audio dramas? Why was that so important just to nail it that way?
We felt from the very get-go that if we were going to do this story justice, the justice it deserves, it has to be the best thing ever. And we wanted to break ground on this. We wanted to be ahead of everyone else's game. And we decided right from the beginning that we were going to make it as an audio movie, as it is. And we decided, okay, who would be the best people to help us do that? And that we thought of, well, who's got the greatest Second World War sound effects? Well, I'll tell you who that is. It's Jimmy Boyle. You know why? Because he did Band of Brothers. And he's done James Bond, and he's done Wonder Woman 84. He is a guy at the top of his game. And we had Ben Wilkins, who won an Oscar for his sound design on Whiplash, and he did the Atmos mix for us. We got Stephen Endelman, who's one of the great composers, movie composers, such an amazing talent with such energy and such specificity on what he could deliver. So by assembling a world-class team, we were able to and get world-class actors. We were able to go out and do it in a world-class way.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up about the actors, because I am going to tiptoe and not spoil anything, but I want to say, how important was the casting? Because when I'm listening to this, actually, this was the plan, just to be frank. I was supposed to listen to this as I did chores during a normal day. That was the plan. But I found myself around episode 3, just sitting down and literally closing my eyes, listening to this. I imagine what all these people look like. Dishes never got washed. It's just they didn't. I'm serious. But what I'm getting at is I found myself immersed in this. So how important was the casting? Because one thing versus a traditional movie, when you point to someone and you can look at them, versus where you're hearing what they bring to the table, how they convey these lines in a almost traditional movie, but it's just audio.
Well, one of the things we were most clear about was making sure that all our actors had very distinctive voices. So you were never confused about who you're listening to. And when you get someone like Brian Cox and John Malkovich, when they speak, you know who's speaking. There's no question about it. Mm-hmm. So not only did we want great actors, but we wanted great actors who were very specifically right for their roles.
Distinctive.
Very distinctive. Yeah. So that's one of the reasons why that was a casting decision. You know, there were guys that's like, oh, this guy would be a great so-and-so, such a great character, but he does sound quite like
sounds similar to X. Even there was a character that I play in there, and we were mindful that it's like, hey, let's make sure just sonically that I'm dropping the tone and the depth of that voice so it doesn't clash with this character here. And you know, because that's all you have is the audio to play with at that point. But from what you said there, Sam, in terms of the attention that we were hoping to demand, you not doing your dishes is music to our ears.
Absolutely. I can't tell you how gratifying it is to hear you say that, because that's what we hope for. You know, that's what we spent 4 years doing, is making this. And some of that writing in mine, it goes back 15 years. And it's, as a writer, you know, you just want your stuff to get made. And when you're looking at a Zoom link and you've got John Malkovich at the microphone holding up, I've got it framed, I've got a picture framed of John Malkovich reading my script, recording my script. And as a writer, you can't ask for any more than that.
Man, for starters, I'm playing this interview back for my wife because I still have 6 more episodes to go to. And when I don't feel like doing it, there's, hey, baby, I'm listening. I can't do them both at the same time. But so I gotta use it sparingly because I only got 6 more left. But just a part of this project, I always love asking this question, and I'm very curious how you would do it, because in an audio format, you wrote it out, you do everything, but in a traditional movie, I always love asking the director or people behind the scenes what's left on the cutting room floor. So I'm going to ask that question again. What didn't, without spoiling it, there are many different ways you could have went, but what was left out that I think you could have elaborated on a little bit more?
Well, I can tell you the answer to that is, you know, we have the inside the episodes as video, which you'll be able to watch or just listen to, you know, a couple of days after each episode. The last one will be a deleted scenes one.
Mm-hmm.
So there's some stuff.
Specifically, it'll show you, yeah, those scenes. So we could spoil it, but actually, we would actually quite like you to listen to those inside the episodes or watch them. The first 0 through 12 are filmed multicam, very sort of HBO style, but that last one is actually purely audio because it's us talking about some scenes that didn't make it in for all sorts of reasons, and we actually play those deleted scenes out. Yeah.
As far as sound effects, now there is very action-packed, and the characters go through a lot. That's what I'll say. They go through a lot. And how was those filmed? Filmed, but how was those recorded? Because you talked about like some of the sound effects that were used, but is it more, I hate to say it like this, the old audio drama where you're actually doing stuff in the moment, or is it just carefully edited and woven in as you're speaking?
If only, Sam, that were an option to have like had a gong in there in real time and do this. No, that was not the process at all. What had happened was we recorded all of those performances individually, barring one. But other than that, all animation style. So everybody's in their own individual booth. We're there, linked in via video in most cases. So we're seeing the performances, and we're also then hearing them in high fidelity sound through Source Connect. Once those were all accumulated, we're talking, you know, multiple takes per scene, thousands of takes. Then when you add in all of the actors, that was all put back together in a puzzle. That once that dialogue foundation was there of each of those scenes, which there was a lot of great work that went on, by the way, by Helen Quigley in the UK, who did a first pass at that, which is the most arduous one. Then we started moving into building, you know, the worlds in and around that with the the atmospheres, putting the actors in the space, like with the right distance from each other. John had you know, an expertise that only really could have come from living and breathing on those ships. And so, you know, part of the wonderful thing about our partnership on this is, you know, he was able to give a level of specificity on that side, being able to say, hey, this is your environment. You're going to be 20 feet from here, like shadows are there. And that's important to get right in those initial performances, right? So that it sells even when the EQ and the atmospheric processes are put on top. And then I've always tried to pride myself on making sure that everything hits the greatest level of truth possible. So I would go in and direct from that perspective. And
but just to add into what you're questioning, I would say that 98% of that was done out of library, out of special effects that were available, rather than sort of making them on the fly. Very, very little was made, maybe the odd, you know, door knocking or something like that.
Yeah, sorry, I was going to get back. It was a long way around to get to that answer for you. Sorry.
But 98, almost all of it was library stuff. But obviously, some effects like walking or knocking or picking a glass up or opening a door, those can be done by the sound designer in the studio or, you know, at home. But a vast amount of it was from the libraries that Jimmy has.
And there was some individual things that would have been created specifically for us, but for the majority of them, no, they worked in that sound design notes back and forth for the specific sound and feel of things. In fact, it got to the level of, you know, certain types of guns that that we had wanted. And John, I remember it asked the question at one point, what was it?
Well, Jimmy Boyle called me up and said, John, what gun have they got on that ship, on the back of that ship? And I said, it's a 5-inch gun from, you know, 1912. He said, no problem, I got one of them.
Right. We needed some Rolls-Royce Maryland engines at one point going over us from that era. Sure enough, they had them. So we just tried to give the most authentic and specific world as we could. And you know what? Might not be noticed for a listener, and that's absolutely fine. But for anyone that wants to dig into the feel of that, it'll be there for them.
Well, we're getting up against it. I got one more question left, and outside of having people avoid household chores, what do you want the audience to take from this audio movie? What do you want the audience to feel as you do this?
For myself, I just hope they find this a gripping and extraordinary story that is, you know, energizing and exciting to listen to, and provides them, I hope, with a real feel for the people and what they achieved on this extraordinary, and it's in this extraordinary time.
No, I'll second that absolutely. If people can be emotionally engaged as they listen throughout this and really get a sense of what it is. Not only let's just take this piece aside, but what it was that those guys on that ship achieved, which was miraculous for many, many reasons. And hopefully we've done a good job of honoring that.
But I also always wanted to honor the Merchant Navy as a whole, which effectively took the biggest hit in terms of percentages of people who were killed in the Second World War. And these guys weren't members of the armed forces, they were civilians. And they had to keep bringing back those ships back to the UK to keep us in the war. And if they hadn't, we'd have lost, not because of anything else. That's the closest we came to losing. And there were 34,000 killed. And I wanted to honor every single one of them.
Well, guys, I think you did a hell of a job when you did this. I know we're up against it. Thank you so much for just joining the podcast, talking about this project, Unsinkable. I wish you guys much success. You're welcome back anytime you want. We can talk about anything else, man. This is great. John, Misha, thanks for stopping by.
Sam, it's been great talking with you. Thank you so much.
All right. Have a great one, guys.
Appreciate it.